Ains had always thought that the title of an absolute overlord was too much for him to bear. It was about time for him to take it off. He had a cordial smile on his face. Don't worry about it, Albedo. Tell me about it. Yes, Ains-sama. Surely you remember our plan to make use of an idiotic noble for the purpose of gaining control over the kingdom. Ains raised a question in his mind. What she said was not what he had expected, but at this point Ains knew what to say. That fool had something to do with it. Albedo nodded. Yes. That dimwit had caused this incident. Ains-sama has probably realized by now the possibility that this could be a scheme of the kingdom's ruling class. More misunderstandings, huh? Ains started thinking. He couldn't see the deeper aspects of such a scheme, but it was probably beneficial to the kingdom to convict a noble associated with Nazark. That way, they could purge a pest from their ranks. I understand, but does the blame truly lie with that imbecile? It's not employed by the kingdom, is it? Wait, Albedo must have investigated the intel already. Sorry for unnecessary questions. No, those questions were only natural for you to ask, Ains-sama. We have prepared a witness for this purpose. Sheltier. Understood. Sheltier curtsied, stood up, and then left through the left door. Right after that, a woman held on both sides by Death Knights returned with Sheltier. She was so thin her bones were visible as if she was sick. She also had heavy bags under her eyes, did not wear any makeup, and had messy hair. Tear stains could be seen around her bloodshot eyes, which darted around uncontrollably like a terrified tiny creature. Ains remembered seeing that person somewhere, but he couldn't recall important details like her name and position. As he tried his best to search through his memories, the Death Knights let go of her. The woman knelt down in one smooth movement. It was flawless, one could even say that it was beautiful. It was something that was only possible through a suitable amount of training. Ains even felt a bit of respect for her because of that. Your Majesty. Her voice was trembling a lot. She paused for a moment, then spoke again, Your Majesty. The room fell silent. Realizing that it was his turn to speak, Ains said in a deep voice. Woman, I permit you to speak your name. Ah, Hilma Cygnaeus, Your Majesty. His reawakened memory spread like vines. She was one of the leaders of the Eight Fingers, the kingdom's crime syndicate. Ah. It was not known how she understood the noise that Ains had made subconsciously. Hilma, who had not raised her head even once, yelled as her forehead rubbed against the floor. I have no idea. No idea. I have absolutely no intention of disobedience. The grain robbery has nothing to do with me. Ains took a glimpse at Albedo's back. It would be incredibly easy to determine if the woman had lied, so Albedo must have done so. So why does she not report the results directly to Ains? Ains didn't know what Albedo was thinking, but it certainly wasn't about stabbing him in the back. Actually, it was probably the opposite. There was some unknown misunderstanding that was born of her holding Ains in too high of a regard. It would not be appropriate to ask her about it directly. I got myself into this situation because I repeatedly performed as my persona, didn't I? Albedo won't understand if this continues on. Should I ask and see what happens? It would have been fine if Albedo was the only one who was here, but the others are also here. Ains looked at Aura and Mare. Next time I guess. Yumu. First of all, let me confirm if Cygnaeus was telling the truth. Dominate. After the spell had been cast, Ains asked Cygnaeus. Did you play any role in that noble robbing our grain convoy? None whatsoever. A dominated individual could not lie to their dominator, which meant that Cygnaeus had no direct connections to the incident. Though an indirect connection was still possible, it wouldn't have made it a responsibility. The hypothetical that she had been lying by ways of memory manipulation was unlikely. Have you been described by others as having multiple personalities? No. Yumu, then do you wish to oppose us? Not at all. I don't have the slightest intention to. Absolutely not. She denied with her fiercest tone yet. Bearing witness to this, Ains released her from his dominate. If we were to punish her based on a crime she wasn't purposely responsible for would be too harsh. Cygnaeus, not guilty. That's my ruling. Cygnaeus raised her head and gazed towards Ains with a brilliant passion within her eyes, to the point where Ains found it to be terrifying. But, Ains-sama, shouldn't the faults of a subordinate be the responsibility of their superiors? That cretin was her responsibility. Albedo was right. You're absolutely correct. But he took those actions randomly and of his own accord. I had instructed him multiple times. Contact me before you do anything. I had even appointed a subordinate to monitor him for this exact reason. Albedo did not object to her explanation. So that was the truth. She had performed her duties to the utmost, so it would be too cruel to let her shoulder the full responsibility for this incident. Albedo, Human Resources, had hired a simpleton who caused major issues in Cygnaeus, the department. Though it's obvious that there were issues within that department, Ains also understood the tendency to want to blame this on HR. Ains, the salaryman, thought about this issue from Cygnaeus' perspective. If he were to leave this matter to Albedo and the others, they would surely dish out severe punishments to her. Then, the faults of a subordinate are the responsibility of their superior. I concur with that statement. Ains watched as the color drained from Hilma's face and continued. But that proverb was set by a leader who wished to shoulder the burden of their subordinate. It was not meant as a way for subordinates to shift blame onto their superiors. As for how encompassing the statement could be, Albedo, let me ask you a question. Cygnaeus was in charge of that dunce, but who was in charge of Cygnaeus? That's my responsibility. Yumu. I am your master, so the responsibility for this incident falls on me in the end, correct? We wouldn't dare. This is absolutely not the fault of Ain Sama. Albedo disavowed his statement with an uncharacteristically panicked expression. Cygnaeus, his expression just a moment prior had been one foretelling of their own doom, now gazed upon Ains with the same spark in her eyes as before. Her face was almost ever-changing. Though Cygnaeus' modus operandi may be flawed, she had performed according to the expectations of her office. For that, she has been forgiven. The first time an error occurs, it is because everyone makes mistakes. The second time around it would be the result of carelessness. The third time should have been avoidable. The fourth time is the one to indicate one's incompetence, Cygnaeus. Yes. Cygnaeus lowered her head so much that it made an audible impact with the floor. It looked painful even from an outside perspective. To prevent a similar incident from occurring again, work harder on your preventative measures. Prepare a set of all of the plans you could think up of, submit them to Albedo, and wait for approval. That will be your punishment. Yes. Cygnaeus rubbed her head against the ground, as if she was trying to lower her head even further. That seems unnecessary. Ains thought as he turned to look towards the guardians. That is my decision, do you have any comments? I will not get angry, so you are free to speak your minds. No one seemed to have objections. Still, every one of them was capable of saying Ain Sama's decisions are always correct with a straight face, even if they had any dissenting opinions, so it wasn't likely that they would give voice to those opinions. In any case, it was better to confirm than not. Albedo. No objections. Demiurge. I concur with Albedo. Or. None. Mayor. Ah. Yes. I don't have any objections. Cygnaeus. No. Objections. Sheltier. None. Were they really fine with it or were they too afraid to speak up? Ains wasn't sure, but he had at least received their approval. Ains forcefully nodded his head and made his judgment final. Good. Now then, Cygnaeus. Prepare those plans within a few days, that is, have them ready within 2 days. Cygnaeus audibly whipped her head upwards. Understood. I'm grateful for my lord's merciful judgment. I thank you from the deepest depths of my heart, O Sorcerer King Haika. Please allow me, Hilma Cygnaeus, to continue loyally serving you from now on. Is that so? Cygnaeus' almost revolting amount of passion reminded him of a girl he had met in the past with scary-looking eyes. I look forward to your loyal service. Now then, Sheltier, please send Cygnaeus back. Understood. Sheltier took Hilma along as she activated her ring's function. The destination of their teleportation was the surface. She should be using gate afterwards, so it shouldn't take too long. With that in mind, they waited in place for her. Not too long after, Sheltier returned alone as he had expected. Now then, that couldn't be the only reason I was called here for, right? If that was the only reason, why then he would be thanking his lucky stars, but that wish was shattered by Albedo. Yes, it is exactly as you have surmised. Ains looked at Albedo as if he had held a grudge against her. He would have loved it if she had only let him hold on to that hope for just a while longer. Is something wrong? Perhaps just then. No, nothing's wrong. Now then, how about you tell me the true purpose behind you calling me, gathering every floor guardian here? Albedo and Demiurge exchanged glances upon being asked. First on the docket, for what purpose did that buffoon undertake his actions? Was someone manipulating him as part of their ploy? That is certainly possible. Depending on the answer to those questions, we may have to significantly revise our plans against the kingdom. For that it would be nice to know what Ain Sama's thoughts are on the matter, so I propose that we ask for your presence. Yumu. As of now our strategy against the kingdom had been candy and whip patented. Have you explained the concept to Or, Mayor, Cygnaeus, and Sheltier before? Demiurge and I were in the process of doing so, but we have yet to explain the specific details of the plan. Is that so? Then Albedo, please share the intel with everybody. Any suggestions or opinions from you all could be helpful. Understood. Albedo began her explanation to the four of them. The candy and whip strategy, the term coined by Ains, was popular due to its simplistic nature. To prepare the kingdom for a takeover was in essence a plan to destabilize the kingdom from the inside, to the point where a portion of the kingdom's citizens would actively hope for peaceful foreign intervention by the Sorcerer's Kingdom. Was it because Demiurge was also involved in the planning process? The plan began sounding more and more like what they had done in the Holy Kingdom. It was a strategy that depended on internal conflicts, and would thus cause a massive loss of life at the start. His preference for internal conflicts over physically invading a country was probably due to him being a fiend. If Kakitas or Schultier were in charge of planning, they would probably prefer more direct methods such as a full-blown invasion. But apparently this plan had been formulated by someone within the kingdom and Albedo, and Demiurge had only made slight modifications on top of the original.